Hello, welcome to the No program. You are a 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂. This is video 1 of 2. We're now moving on to the second page, and we'll be talking about mental control in this week's workshop. So what to know in you are a 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂, that you are a spiritual fraction coupled with an ego entity, guides, soul agreements, and archetypes, karma, fate, and free will. A soul matures and grows through experience, and so it fractions portions of itself to couple with chosen ego entities, thus creating human beings. And these are part spirit, eternal true self, portions of the soul, part ego, temporary ego portions that feel very real. So a 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂, that's what you are. Your soul sends a fraction of its totality to couple up, and the choosing of the ego entity is not random. And the coupling happens in utero. Subconsciously, connections are in place before birth, plus a seamless conscious mind connection between higher and lower mind, allowing for higher rational and abstract thoughts to work alongside the lower thoughts, which are instinctive and animalistic in type. The 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂 allows for a unique set of experiences, and the ongoing focus of the awake awareness determines the nature of the life being experienced by the 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂 at any time. And I want to quickly talk to you about the bucket and torch in a cave analogy. I want you to imagine a giant cave, a very dark cave with the highest magical walls you can fathom. Now imagine that there are 3D pictures on the walls of this cave, pictures of your life situations, circumstances, and the people that you come across are all on the wall in a sequential manner, like your life story. However, the lowest levels of the cave wall show life stories with pain, anguish, and are full of fearful situations. And these life story lines keep improving as one moves up the wall. In fact, high up on the top layers are those blissful life stories we so love to experience. But we only desire them so much because we've seen the lowest levels, which created the want within. Now imagine a powerful laser torch in your hand, and it's pointing at the cave wall so you can see something. And only your current life story is visible to you, the others simply not existing. Now there's a bucket attached to your wrist called your mood bucket, which bucket has a large helium balloon permanently attached to it. And this helium lifted bucket pulls your hand up so that the torch can shine onto the highest levels when the up pulling force of the balloon is stronger than the weights in the bucket. But you keep throwing heavy thoughts of fear, disappointment, and despair into this bucket. And when it does occasionally start to move up, as those heavy thoughts dissolve, your beliefs and your mood about what you're capable of experiencing, causing you to ruminate in yesterday's unpleasantries or expecting more of the same nonsense tomorrow, keep filling the bucket with more repeated heavy thoughts. Finally, now that you're being told how the bucket works, and you're being told how to alter your beliefs and your mood in order to ultimately place less and less heavy thoughts into the bucket, and your arm then keeps lifting, and your torch keeps shining on higher and higher levels of the cave wall. As your life circumstances, events, and the types of people surrounding you then increase your daily joy, and you feel happier about living, so you realize that the entire cave wall was and will always be there for you to experience. You're not creating the cave wall. You are simply altering the weight in your bucket, and the natural tendency is and will always be for the balloon to pull your wrist upwards. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't do the lifting, you just lessen the weights. But isn't it so much better when the light shines up onto the highest levels? And it's better because you've seen the lowest levels and you can remember them. Find out more about how this bucket works and find out more how to lessen the weights, and then do that. Because without doing it, simply knowing about it won't change the angle of the torch. Furthermore, the 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂's physical experience is characterized by a constant atomic gravitational pull, which slows and delays the base matrix response in our physical life. And this causes major delays in the manifestations of projected thought and emotion as observed by the physical awareness, which delays or manifestation gaps lead to ego suffering or pain, especially in those more disconnected and unaware humans amongst us. So just know this, a 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂 is connected and simultaneously present at each level from 3 to 7, and experiences at each of these levels simultaneously using the corresponding body, but its awake awareness automatically defaults to the lowest of the bodies it possesses, and it's subject to the veil as well. So the characteristics of the 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂 seamlessly combine soul fraction and ego entities, starting in utero and ending when the 3 ego bodies are eventually shed, exists at all levels, 3 to 7, but as I said, defaults the awake awareness to its lowest body. That is important when physical death takes place. The next lowest body will be level 6, the emotional body. However, can focus awake awareness on any of its bodies using will, while still being in the physical body, but it's still subject to the veil. And then depending on soul maturity and the fractioned amount, the spiritual fraction can vary greatly in talents, character, and the strength of will for a fair fight with the ego entity. This is also very important, and it's expanded upon in one of the expert webinars. The chosen ego entity's gender, background, physical and other components will also vary greatly. And the 𝑆P𝐼G𝑂 has certain growth and experiential milestones in its path, preset or pre-arranged, but no other predetermined fate, which allows for free will and unexpected variations. As far as soul agreements back home, do know that there are guides and entities that assist with the preparation of the coupling, and these guides keep guiding through your coupling experience. And there are certain agreements in place with other fraction portions and other souls, so that certain of the milestones, especially when it comes to relationships, are achieved and are preset in agreements, in soul agreements that are set up prior to the coupling period is entered into. And then as far as archetypes, do know that there are various archetypes or flavors of being, as far as having an interaction with the ego entity in order to create a specific experience, environment, or a specific type of environment during the coupling period. Karma is a mathematical debt, and the way that karma is set up isn't as complicated as all that. The minute that an action or a thought is carried out with the ego entity's influence or ego-based, be it out of fear or anger, which, as I've explained before in one of the previous workshops when we touched upon good and evil, that from the ego entity's perspective, at that point, whatever it thought of or whatever action it carried out, it made sense, even if only for a short period. Whichever the situation, the ego entity in the presence of the spiritual fraction will carry out the action and will have the thought which it wouldn't want done unto itself. That's the golden rule of most religions: done unto others or what you wouldn't want done unto yourself. Because at a subconscious level, the fractioned spiritual portion will immediately set up a mathematical debt, because now that whatever action was carried out or thought was had is not in line with the spiritual principles of the soul. There is a subconscious mathematical debt set up that will then create a focal point at thought and emotional level that will bring about the undesired to that entity, and thus perception of a karma scenario is set up as if some external force is acting upon that entity, but it is not external. It's coming from within the entity. So as actions are carried out by the ego entity that are not in line with the golden rule, at a subconscious level is now in place a belief that this should not have happened, and that belief and that memory of the event or the action will bring about that action to the individual through the creative mechanisms that we're going to go into in a couple of workshops, where you'll start to understand through the balancing of forces, those things that we fear and those things that we regret, they will come to pass because we'll attract them. We'll attract them through thoughts and emotions until they manifest. And this is explained in detail in one of the expert webinars. It will also include a discussion around fate and free will, which coexist, where certain milestones and certain predetermined events and situations are set up in the agreements before the coupling takes place. But outside of that, free will exists. And even those milestones and even those situations can occur at completely different life circumstances. So the free will is quite extensive, and the life is not predetermined in any way, except for the milestones and situations that are to pass as a result of the agreements that were put in by the fraction portion prior to the coupling. As far as premonitions being self-fulfilling prophecies, the chicken or the egg scenario, it's obvious for anyone that spends a few seconds looking at it that if you receive an intuitive idea or thought or premonition about something that's coming to pass, that's due to come to pass, then if that comes to pass, you might say, well, I had a premonition or intuition and I knew it was coming to pass. So you can say, I was able to foresee the future. However, if you look at it from another perspective, which is you made those things happen through whatever it was that you were thinking and feeling about. So you created a situation that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And therefore, it wasn't a premonition so much as you created with the idea that something was going to happen. So you brought about that future. It's difficult to reconcile the two and to justify one versus the other. In the expert webinars around karma, fate, and free will, we will talk about how these coexist outside of time, and it'll make sense then. Remember, don't wait to be completely ready for the plans and ideas you have in mind. Take action now, and along the way, you will learn and become ready. You also need to know about energy centers, energy directions and guilt, and higher thoughts, concepts, and will. And with that said, let's keep going.